On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, our final predictions: will the Thunder win the NBA championship? And what bold predictions do we have on today's show?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Styles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. On today's show, brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Get last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed by downloading the Game Time app, creating your account, and using code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're joined by Brandon Rabar, Daily Thunder beat writer, 1077 The Franchise, KREF. You can find both of us on the OKC Thunder Dream Team and Thunder After Dark. Brandon, how you doing today?
I'm good. The NBA season is upon us. I'm excited. I'm legitimately excited. As somebody whose two football teams are having their worst seasons in a long time, I am very excited to start this NBA season and to cover and report on a team who I think, and we'll cover this in this podcast, who I think is going to be much more successful than my football teams that I've been following have been.
We can only hope. I mean, OU is firing offensive coordinators, and Dallas is just, Dallas. So hopefully this is a nice reprieve for you to follow a team that actually knows what they're doing and has good leadership. So, Brandon, it's NBA season week. The Thunder, as basketball is being played right now, they have to wait until Thursday to play, but they do get the national TV treatment for the wait. So it will be worth the wait when they play in Denver on TNT tomorrow night. Brandon, when you look at this opening week, what jumps out at you? I mean, the Thunder play 3 games in 4 nights. They have no Isaiah Hartenstein. How do you think that they're going to fare against Denver? And they have Chicago, and then they have Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't think that the NBA did them any favors with the schedule, to be honest. I get the national TV. That bit of it is really, really cool to open up playing on national TV against Jokic and the Nuggets, former champs. That is great. But have to wait 2 days. That's a bummer. But 3 games and 4 nights to open the season. Like you said, you don't have Hartenstein. The first game on the road against Nuggets, obviously, that's a tough one. And then you got the Bulls in Chicago. The storyline there is going to be obviously Josh Giddey versus the Thunder. And then, home opener, second night of back-to-back, third game in 4 nights is rough. Obviously, the Thunder are better than the Hawks. I like the chances, even on the second night of a back-to-back. I like their chances against the Bulls. And that Nuggets game, I mean, I think that's a 50-50 call. I think if the Thunder had Hartenstein, I would like their chances a lot more. But, on the road, this is still a better Thunder team. Flipping Giddey for Caruso basically is what they're doing. But they also don't have Jay Will. They also don't have Kenrich Williams to be able to throw at the Nuggets bigs as well. But I think that opening night is going to be a good, fun, close, competitive game that could probably go either way.
It's going to be fun to see this team. Hopefully they do have Jay Will back. But when you look at the season, Brandon, the season as a whole, so now we're big picture, we're all 82 games encompassing. Is there a bold prediction sticking with you right now that you really want to get off your chest? They're like, man, no one else really believes this. I believe it. Is there a bold prediction in you?
Ooh, man, that's good. I don't know how bold it is, but I do think, provided health, I don't know if this is bold, because probably a lot of people are saying this and thinking this. I think it's the combination. I think that the Thunder, provided health, will win 60 games, be the 1 seed, and have more than one all-star. So it's kind of like the combination of these.
You've parlayed your bold predictions.
Yes, it's a parlay, which makes it bolder. If I were just to say one of those things, it's not quite as bold. But 60 games and multiple all-stars, I think, I think that's not bad. And I'm not even sure who the second all-star is going to be, Ryan. I don't know if it's going to be Chet or if it's going to be J-Dub. But I think that the Thunder, given their success I think they will earn 2 All-Stars, and I think that both J-Dub and Chet are going to play at an All-Star level, and one of those guys can be selected.
Well, Brandon, you've hinted and danced around my bold prediction. The Thunder are going to have 3 All-Stars. Like, they're going to get 3 All-Stars when it's all said and done. When it's all said and done. So perhaps the initial roster comes out and there's only 1 or 2, but when the dust settles and the injury replacements have taken place and the ball's tipped in the air in the Chase Center, the Thunder will have Shea, J-Dub, and Chet in All-Star jerseys.
I like it. It's tough in the
I think we lost your audio, Brandon. It's tough in the West is the last thing that we.
I somehow got muted. I didn't even press anything.
Here we go.
It's tough in the West. That's why I didn't quite want to go to 3, but I like that you went to 3. I like that you went there. I think that all 3 of the guys are going to play All-Star level. It's just a matter of, whether there's spots open and whether those kind of incumbent older guys are going to take the spots and how well some of the other guys in the West are going to play. But I do think absolutely all 3 of those guys are going to play at an All-Star level. And if the Thunder are the 1 seed, we've seen 1 seeds get multiple All-Stars. So 3 would be really, really impressive.
3 is pretty bold, but I just think that, the J-Dub up and 3-pointer, you got Chet attacking the rim more and upping his production at the free throw line by getting there on more often. I just think that they are going to be a duo that is able to go to an All-Star level. And with injury replacements, I think that Chet would be the one that needs some help in that category of like an AD sits out or something of a meaningless exhibition and he gets to come into the fold. But I think that it can and will happen. So I'm going to put you on the hot seat, Brandon. This team is loaded with defenders. How many all-defensive players from the Thunder are on the all-defensive team? And who is their best defender of all their elite defenders?
Now, that is a tough one. I'm going to kind of I'm going to say 2 to answer the first question. And I don't know which 2 it'll be. Alex Caruso, Chet Holmgren, Lou Dort, I think, are the 3. I think Shea gets votes. I think J-Dub is a great defender. The Thunder are just loaded with defenders, obviously. Kason Wallace is a great defender. He won't get the minutes or the role. I'll say Caruso makes it and Chet Holmgren makes it. And Lou Dort is also receiving votes. Who is their best defender? I think you can make a good argument for all 3. I think right now you got to say Caruso, given his, he's made first team all defense. He's made second team all defense in back-to-back years. He's proven it and he's been a champion, and his defense, was pretty pivotal in a championship run. That said, I think coming into the season, I think Caruso is the best defender. I think by the end of this season, Chet Holmgren is the best defender. I think he is the anchor. So I think he's the most important piece of this top 3 Thunder defense. And top 3 is being conservative.
This is the best defense in the NBA. And you hit the nail on the head of Caruso has the pedigree. Caruso can switch 1 through 4, which is highly valuable in a game that's all about the perimeter. But Chet's ability to be elite at the rim and be at such an elite level for his position at switching out to an island that I think that when it's all said and done, and now you've got 2 years of body of work and you're no longer banking on it just being 1 year as a rookie or whatever, now that you've gotten, further away from it being hyperbolic or irrational or just an overzealous opinion, Chet will be viewed as the best defender on the best defense, as typically backline guys are viewed in any defense, really, across sports, but particularly in the NBA. Brandon, I want to go outside the box because we have spent time this month. We'll spend more time today talking J-Dub, Chet, Shea. What player is the most underrated player on the roster that you think will have such a massive impact? You cannot stop talking, thinking, raving about them, and you want to give them some shine here. Who do you think is poised to be that guy that we're just like, man, people are underselling blank?
Before I answer this, I had to mention Hartenstein because I didn't mention him with all those great defenders I mentioned. Just because he's going to be out 15 to 20 games, he should be mentioned because he's another great defender. But I think that the most underrated player on this Thunder team is actually Cason Wallace. And here's why. Everybody, for good reason, talks about Shea, J-Dub, and Chet as the stars. They are the stars. And then everybody talks about that next tier of Lou Dort, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Alex Caruso for good reason. They're the next three guys that are going to play big minutes and everything. Then Aaron Wiggins saved basketball, got the big contract extension, and Isaiah Jones is the three-point sniper, got the contract extension. And then there's Cason Wallace, who came in as a rookie, and he played great perimeter defense, and he shot over 40% from three. And he played every single game of the season. And he had an impact on winning not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs. He played important minutes in the playoffs. We saw him lock down CJ McCollum for a game-winning attempt in the opening round of the playoffs. And still, and then, the Thunder draft Nikola Topic, and they draft Dylan Jones and AJ Mitchell. And those guys have been talked a lot about because they're rookies, and they played well in summer league, and they played well in preseason. And everybody kind of wonders what's going to happen with Ousmane Dieng and his minutes. And all along, like, nobody talks about Cason Wallace. This dude is so good. And I think for a lot of young teams, he would be, a top 1, 2, 3 core member that everybody was excited about. He's just kind of buried on the Thunder depth chart because there's so many guards and so many guys who kind of play his role. But I think he is a really good player, and I think he's going to get better. And I think he's an important piece that I think is the most underrated player on this Thunder team.
I love that pick. I have a story with Cason Wallace coming out this week on Thunder on SI, talking about Call of Duty and his love for Call of Duty, which is a lot of fun. But my pick is Aaron Wiggins. I just think that this guy has shown efficiency at all three levels. He's versatile defensively. He can literally plug and play for anybody on the roster if they tweak an ankle here or need a break there. And so his versatility, his efficiency, scoring the basketball, and the fact that we left so many games a year ago wishing he would have played more. He's got that extension now. He should be a fixture of the rotation now. I just think that he's overall one of your top 8 guys. And top 8 guys on a title contender are very important to find out. And the fact that you have such a good one is a great thing in Oklahoma City. And he'll help win a ton of games because, after all, he did save basketball. Coming up, Brandon, will Aaron Wiggins save basketball enough to win the Thunder the title? How far are they going to go? You can't back out of these predictions coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at FanDuel. Check out FanDuel today because while the NFL season is in full swing, Brennan Cowboys are in disarray. You can get a big return for the season starting on the NBA at America's #1 sports book. So no matter if you just hop in the middle of the game or you want to go and plan things out with the spread, player props, over-unders, whatever you want, FanDuel has it for you. You can go there right now and get $200 in bonus bets. That's $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Go there right now. We're the Thunder opening night against Denver, 2-point underdogs. So if you think they're going to win opening night, go check out FanDuel.com. Place that first $5 bet. Get $200 back, win or lose, at FanDuel. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Rylan Stiles. Joining me is Brandon Rabar from Daily Thunder, beat writer, KREF 1077, The Franchise, and so much more. Brandon, when you look at this Thunder team, we've talked underrated, we've talked all-star impact. Who do you think has the most, who or what position or what aspect of this team has the most question marks entering this year? Because we both know there's no such thing as a perfect NBA team. As much as the Thunder look at right now on paper, there's no such thing as the perfect NBA team. So what are you most questioning about this team entering the season?
I would say the big man depth only because Isaiah Hartenstein is hurt right now. Like just for the first 15 to 20 games, I'm very curious. We don't know yet what's going on with Jay Will or Kenrich, where they're at. I know that Mark Daigneault says that they're progressing. They're going to be reevaluated after, preseason with the season opening. We just not quite sure when those guys are going to be available to play. We know that they signed Alex Reese. We know that he's a 6'9" big man that can shoot. But we don't know, like, is he going to be in the rotation? Is that going to be Ousmane Dieng playing, some minutes at the 5? Is it going to be Dylan Jones, a guy who's basically a playmaker, 6'5" body, but he's, 240 pounds, 6'11" wingspan, plays very physically. So I'm just curious, you want to see the Thunder off to a good start with all these expectations this season. And they have their eyes on something big this season. I think, fans do, certainly. Analysts, we all do. I know the Thunder 0-0 mentality, taking it day by day. But we're all thinking this is a season that the Thunder could win it all. But you want to see them get off to a good start. I'm just curious, these first, 20 games, what they do behind Chet Holmgren with Isaiah Hartenstein out.
That's going to be interesting to see how they patchwork that together and make it through. And it can be as simple as like we find out that Jay Will is back and or Kenny is back, or both are back. And you just shrug your shoulders at the iHeart injury and say, heal up and get ready to go, because this is the same core that won 57 games, only you swapped out Giddey in place of Caruso, which really helps your roster. So I just think that storyline, we just don't know enough yet to find out about it. It can go in a bunch of different directions, right, wrong, or indifferent, but we just got to find out more of what the trend is for those two guys who are hampered with injuries. I'm going to go with, say it with me, the secondary ball handler, the secondary creator for that secondary unit. I think that the Thunder have given themselves a ton of chances to figure this out. I mean, it could be AJ Mitchell. It could be Cason Wallace tapping into his point guard background. It could be J-Dub taking a playmaking leap. It could be Isaiah Hartenstein in the high post. Like it could be plenty of people. You saw Isaiah Joe last year get better with the ball in his hands. Can that continue? It could be a ton of people. Who is it actually going to be? Like how is it actually going to work? They've talked about Chet Holmgren having the ball more in his hands. Like, how does that actually get made whole when it's all said and done? Andrew was on the show yesterday, and he saved his prediction for down to dunk. You're not going to have that luxury. I'll tell you that right now. I'm still going to give you a few questions to warm up, but don't think that there's a way to skirt out of your prediction. So I'm going to give you ample time to get it going. But Brandon, if you had to pick just one, and what a luxury it is to have both, who between Caruso and Hartenstein is the biggest addition from this offseason?
Now, how do you know I'm not going to co-host Down to Dunk this week for the season preview pod? No, I'm just kidding. I think between those two guys, gosh, that is a tough one. Let's pretend that Isaiah Hartenstein doesn't miss any time. We're just like looking at like overall impact. I think Hartenstein. I think that Caruso is a luxury, and I think that Hartenstein was a need. And so I think I will give the edge to iHeart. The Thunder needed rim protection behind Chet Holmgren. They needed rebounding. They need physicality. They needed a guy to set screens and a guy like Hartenstein that just the things that the Thunder you could point to last season and say, they could get a little bit better here. They could get a little bit better there. Hartenstein fills those needs. Now, Caruso takes an already incredible defense and an already incredible shooting team and takes that to another level. So to me, that's like a luxury. You made a strength stronger, but Hartenstein filled a very important need. So I'll go with iHeart.
So I totally agree with literally everything you just said. I think it comes down to necessity versus luxury. iHeart was a necessity that you had to fill. You did it. It was a luxury to get to upgrade Josh Giddey to Caruso from your play style. Josh Giddey will have a fantastic career in Chicago, but Caruso more so fits with what the Thunder identity is. And so that helps you out in a big way, but not as much as fixing the glaring hole, because at the end of the day, you can talk about Josh Giddey being benched. You can talk about Josh Giddey being a negative in that Dallas series. If they had a semblance of a backup center that was playoff caliber, they would have won that series against Dallas. For as much as PJ went off, for as much as Josh Giddey didn't, they would have been able to win that series with a competent backup in a playoff caliber setting. J-Will was not ready for that yet. I think he's progressing well, especially as far as second rounders go. But he was put in a spot where, you could have never dreamed that you'd have to put him with the conference finals on the line. He's your backup center. Whenever you drafted him 2 years prior, you did not think that was going to happen. So I just think that it was a case where you had to go get someone like Hartenstein, and they did that. But Brandon, for the Thunder to win a championship and for them to fulfill these lofty goals, what has to happen this year?
I think that they had to remain relatively healthy. And I think that they have to play with the same, and this is, I'm going to say this, but we all know that they will. So I'll just lead with that. But they had to play with the same kind of like mindset and urgency that they played with before. The media had asked, the Thunder some questions about, being the hunter versus the hunted and how that role has changed and how expectations have changed and all those things. But I think anybody that follows this team knows they have the right mindset. They have the right mentality, and they're not going to let those expectations change how they go about business. Mark Daigneault's certainly not going to, change the way he goes about business. Neither is Shea, and neither are any of the guys on this team. So, but I think that's what it comes down to. If this team is healthy and they play the way that they've played the last couple seasons, they're better. So I think that they can do anything that's in front of them, given those things.
So I like your pick. My pick is this 3-point volume uptick in the preaching about it and the executing it. It can't be a preseason gimmick. We've seen other teams, and including the Thunder, like with Steven Adams shooting threes, we've seen other teams like have a subject matter that they harped on in training camp in the preseason, and they went out and did it in the preseason and training camp. And you're thinking, okay, this is clicked for that team. And then the regular season starts and you kind of just fall back into what works and what your habits are. For the Thunder to get to their end goal, you have to be willing to shoot threes. This team was the best 3-point shooting team a year ago. They took 16 most 3-pointers per game as the best 3-point shooting team in the league. And so I just think that the difference in last year's series, and this is another thing to throw on there. Like, as much as you can talk about Josh Giddey, you can talk about J-Dub not being ready offensively. You can talk about how they didn't have a backup center. The main difference in that series, which was neck and neck, and you scored the same amount of points as Dallas did, and you lost in 6 games. The difference was Dallas had guys who were not afraid of the moment, were confident, and were ready to shoot the basketball. The only way PJ Washington gets a Steph Curry series is by shooting. Like, if he were passing up those looks, hunting for a great shot, he would have never became Steph Curry. The Mavs would have never won, and the series would have been over. Same thing with the Thunder. They were hunting for great shots that never came. And so you didn't get a Cason Wallace outbreak or a Wiggins outbreak or a name your role player outbreak. To get those outbreaks, you've got to actually shoot. And so understanding that, yes, you can work for a great shot on a Tuesday in Charlotte because those guys are not going to be playing the caliber of defense you see in the playoffs. But in the playoffs, whenever every team is locked in defensively for 48 minutes, you cannot just simply outwork another team. Eventually, you've all got to shoot okay shots and be okay with it and be comfortable in that. And so training yourself that way in the regular season, where you can view it as, oh my gosh, they're settling for threes. Or you can view it as, hey, yeah, that they could have gotten an even better shot somewhere down the line, but that was a more than passable shot that is either going to go in or out, and you've got to be ready to take those shots in their most important games, which, when you get to this status of title contender, preparing yourself for those moments matter way more than winning in June. I mean, I'm sorry, than winning in January, because you want to win in June.
No, I think that's a great answer. And they absolutely have guys across the roster that I'm not afraid to take a good open three. And like you said, last year they wanted the best shot. If they just take a good shot this year instead of hunting for the very best shot, and sometimes it's great to hunt for the best shot. It is, but sometimes there's some good shots that good shooters should shoot. And this team, like, I trust Shea to shoot, J-Dub, Chet, Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, like, go up and down, like Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins. All these guys are good shooters, but the volume wasn't there because they wanted and hunted for the very best shot. Yeah, I agree. Up the volume. These guys can shoot. Let them shoot. And I think that they will. I think that the preseason, I think it would be one thing if they talked about it and didn't do it, or if they did it, but they didn't talk about it, and that could be coincidental. But they talked about upping the volume and they upped the volume. So the words and the actions match up. And this team, when they talk about doing something, they tend to do it. Like, it's not usually just words. Like, they've worked on those things, they've talked about those things, and now they want to implement those things. So I think we will see the volume come up, and definitely it's going to come up for Shea and J-Dub. Shea, we all know that he's probably the biggest superstar that takes the least amount of threes. I think those are going to go up given the preseason and given what he worked on this summer. And J-Dub, probably the biggest budding star that can shoot, 43% from three, that took the least amount of threes. He's certainly going to take more threes this season as well. So those two in particular, I think the volume is definitely going to go up for.
Yeah, I totally buy into it, and I buy into it actually going up. It just actually has to do it. Coming up, let's finally answer the question, Brandon. Are the Thunder going to win the NBA championship? But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at Game Time. Check out the Game Time app. There's a billion and one reasons to love Game Time. For starters, they're not going to cost you $1 billion. You go there and you get all-in pricing when you toggle that feature on, and it shows you the price right up front. No surprises at checkout. That is my favorite feature about Game Time. I also love the view from your seat, a panoramic view of your seat on the app before you buy. But I think now more than ever, Game Time becomes even more important. I'll tell you why. Lowest prices guaranteed. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you somehow find the cheaper ticket, which you won't. But that's how confident they are that you will not. Why is last minute tickets, lowest prices so important? Well, Brandon, in the NBA season, you know this. We're sitting there furiously refreshing the NBA injury report hourly to figure out who's in, who's out, who's going to play. And sometimes we don't get that info until like 5:30 for a 7 p.m. tip. You don't want to buy tickets 5 days in advance and then your favorite player's not playing. You want to wait it out, make sure your guy's going to be there, make sure your guy's going to play, and then hop on over to the Paycom Center. So go download their app today at Game Time, create your account, use code LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions to apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase by downloading the Game Time app. What time is it, Brandon? Oh, it's game time. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Brian Rabar, Daily Thunder beat writer, is there. I'm Rylan Stiles, host of Lockdown Thunder and Thunder on SI beat writer. Brandon, we've talked about how the Thunder and what they need to do to win a championship. What do you think would stop them from winning a championship?
Stop that. Health, and the West is really, really stacked. I think that the Thunder are the best team in the West, but the Mavs are a very good team. The Wolves are a very good team. The Nuggets are a very good team. And if you get into a playoff series with any of these teams, maybe even the Grizz, the Lakers could cause some, they used to be able to cause some matchup problems, but if Chet and Hartenstein are healthy, I don't think that's so much a case anymore. But you can get to a series, a really good team could get hot and a really good team could get cold. So, some of you got to have some luck as far as like health and matchups and those type of things. But if I were to say one thing, just because I do think that this team is the best team roster-wise, talent-wise, depth-wise in the West, I would just say health. You just hope for a healthy season.
Health is completely fair. I would say inexperience of you look at this team, they have the least amount of combined minutes in the NBA, like of any team. They're still the youngest team in the NBA in that regard. And I think that you can get carried away in every prediction you read this week, and there's going to be a ton come out Tuesday with the season starting. Every prediction you read this week will have the Thunder playing the Celtics in the finals and the Thunder in the West Finals. And like, really, no one's going to have them fall short of the West Finals. You can get swept up in that and like start to expect that and demand that and think anything less than the finals is a failure, go around the NBA and look at the guys who've actually won a title. Like, who's won a title? Who do you consider, hey, that guy can win? That guy does win. That guy is a bona fide champion. And how many of those guys pulled it off in their second ever postseason? And conversely, how many of those guys had to go through not only trials and tribulations, not only a tough Dallas series loss, but they had to go through legitimate questions of, are they capable of winning a championship? Because they failed so much leading up to that, quote unquote, failed so much leading up to that. This is the second ever postseason for Chet and J-Dub. And we can talk all day long about the depth and the fantastic, savvy Sam Presti moves of Hartenstein and Caruso. At the end of the day, when the chips are down and the cards are held on the table, thrown on the table, whatever you say in poker, it comes down to, in a star-driven league, your top three. Kyrie and Luka have done it before. Jamal Murray and Jokic have done it before. Like, Shea, bona fide playoff player. I think that he cemented that a year ago. Questions about J-Dub, questions about Chet. What the Thunder are banking on is either this year, next year, the year after, somewhere in this window here where you have these guys, you have Hartenstein, Caruso, you have this depth. Like, eventually these guys are going to figure it out. And hopefully it's this year. But I think the only thing stopping them is if those two guys are not up to snuff in the playoffs. And yes, it's a ton of pressure to put on second-year guys in the sense of second-year postseason. But that's where this team's at. Like, they are the number 2 and 3 option, and every team only goes as far as their top 3 options go. Hopefully, they're ready to take that leap, and I think it's a solid bet by the Thunder that they are, but that's still a uphill climb.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look at all the greats. Michael Jordan didn't win one until he was 27. LeBron, same thing. Jason Tatum, people were wondering that until last year. They were wondering if he could ever win one, and he's the same age as Shea. So that was funny that they even asked that in the first place. But you can kind of historically go by, the biggest superstars. Dirk, obviously was older and people wondered forever if he could win one.
They called Dirk soft his whole career, and all he does is go take out the Heatles. Like, right. That's how silly this is. That's how silly this stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah. So historically, you have had to gone through, several playoff series and kind of like, take your hits, lick your wounds, come back, get the experience, come back and win. So I do think that there's a reason why, it's usually older stars in their late 20s who win their first time, historically. I think because Shea, like you said, has proven that he's going to be a playoff performer. And also we saw it on the Olympic stage, like the international stage, like when everything was on him, like he just kind of is one of those guys that rises to the occasion, ice in the veins. So you do kind of just wait and see with J-Dub and Chet. And, that was their first playoff run last year. I think we all believe they have it in them. We just have to see it in the playoffs. And we saw some really, really good flashes last year and some really, really good signs last year. But hopefully, like you said, they can put it all together for a postseason run. The West is also just so tough. I come back to that too. The West is just there is the first round matchup in the West is going to be a really tough team that probably had title aspirations going into the season. A first round matchup. Second round matchup is certainly going to be that. And then a Western Conference final is, it's going to be, it's either going to be Luka, it's going to be like Ant and that whole Wolves crew. It's going to be, Jokic, he's already done it. It's going to be possibly KD. I mean, like the West, there's, the Celtics we saw had an easy ride last year, to the finals, and they earned it. You can only play who's in front of you. But in the West, it's going to be a brutal stretch for whoever gets to the finals.
That being said, Brandon, the Thunder are the kings of anomaly. Like they've been in an anomaly this entire run, going back to making the play-in and then going to the 1 seed last year and winning their first playoff series since 2016 last year. Like this team is just a team that bucks traditional trends. They'd have to buck another one to go win an NBA championship, but it's not impossible. Far from impossible, actually. So without further ado, Brandon, first and foremost, how many games is this Thunder team winning?
I'm going to say 60 exactly. I think they're a 60-win team. If Hartenstein wasn't missing the first, 15 to 20 games, I might bump that up a little bit, but I got to hedge a little bit down and just go with a flat 60 with Hart out for a while.
So I just said 64 because it felt right, and I'm going to stick with it. 64 wins for the Thunder. They get a couple early that, like, you just think, man, like right now you're thinking, man, they could have won that game. Like, for example, Denver on Thursday. Could have won that game if you had Hartenstein, but I think that they're actually going to get the win. And so, like, that changes how you perceive this stretch without Hartenstein. And then when Hartenstein comes, oh my gosh, you're just clicking on all cylinders. So I'm going to go 64. I think that that's way overzealous, but like Joe Mazzato said on the show, I'm done underestimating this team because every time you underestimate them, you just look like a complete fool. So you might as well just go out on the limb the other way because they're more likely to make you right the other way than they are being cautious. But Brandon, how far do the Thunder get in the NBA postseason?
I believe that this is the most talented team in the West, and I think it is every bit as talented as the Celtics. Like, I think you kind of go down the roster. I think those are the two most talented teams in the NBA. I think are the Celtics and the Thunder. There are a lot of obstacles in the West. We already talked about it. No easy matchups. It's going to be tough. They are inexperienced. You know, every title team has to have a little bit of luck. You have to be healthy, all those things. But all I can go on is what this team has shown us and the talent on this team and how they've improved the roster and how the internal development of the young guys is going to make this team better. And the fact that they're going to have a coaching edge, like in pretty much every series. And they're going to have the best player in almost every series, arguably the best player, no matter what series they're in. You know, you could at least make that argument with Shea. So I say that they will make it to the NBA Finals.
And will they win it
or
lose
Ryland?
It? I'll let you think for a second because okay. I too believe that they're going to go to the NBA Finals. My matchup is Thunder Boston. What is your matchup?
It's Thunder Boston. I think they're the two best teams. I think like you can only go by what the roster and the talent says and all those things. You can't predict, you know, and right now as the season tips off, those are the two best teams in the NBA.
You want to say our winners on 3?
Let's do it on 3. Yeah, let's do it on 3. Right. Let's do it on 3.
Between Boston and Oklahoma City, who wins the NBA championship? Brandon, 1, 2, 3, Boston.
I started saying OKC. I was waiting. I was like kind of cheating. I'll say OKC. So I was going to say the opposite of whatever you said. If you said Boston, I was going to say OKC. And if you said OKC, I was going to say Boston.
So it's a true coin flip for you.
It really is. It really is. So I'll go with OKC since you said Boston. But
so my reasoning for Boston is that like I fully appreciate how hard it is to repeat as a champion. And in any other given scenario, I would say, I mean, it's just too tough to repeat. We have rarely ever seen repeat winners, except for a very few dynastic runs. But I still think Boston will have a better win-loss record than OKC getting to beat up on the East. And I think that they'll still take it seriously, even without Porzingis. And if that is true, and the Celtics have home court advantage, they not only have a home court advantage, but they have all the experience in the world. That is the toughest place to go play for an inexperienced team in this scenario. And this was still a heck of a season for the Thunder to go to the NBA Finals. And the Celtics are able to overcome a 7-game series and lean on their championship pedigree. And the Thunder are saying, wow, we got all the miles we could need now. Let's go run it back. Let's go have our chance at actually winning one, getting over the hump. So I think Game 7 in Boston just takes over in the end.
Yeah. So I was actually on a Boston podcast the other day, and we were talking about it, and I said pretty much the same thing. I really do think it's a coin flip, and I flip-flop who I think is going to win, but I told them the same thing that you just said. I think that the Celtics will have the better record because they're in the East, so they'll get to beat up on some teams and get some extra wins that I don't think the Thunder do. So I do think that they'll have the home court advantage, and they also have the experience. They won it last year. They've been there. They've done that. I think that roster-wise, I think it's a coin flip. But I do think, they do at least have the home court advantage more than likely and the experience. That said, I said this also on the flip side of that, because, again, it's a coin flip. The Thunder will be incredibly battle tested if they make it to the NBA finals because of what they had to go through in the West to get there. So like all the inexperience and can they do this? I think you kind of throw out the window if they're in the finals, because that means that they likely beat, say, the Lakers and the Nuggets and the Mavs to get there. So you can, they're big enough, the stage is not too big for them at that point. So yeah, I'm sorry I cheated. I was just wanting to go with whatever you didn't say, because I do think it's a coin flip.
No, I mean, that just shows how up in the air it is. But Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. Let them know where they can go check you out.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Brandon Rabar. I'm also at dailythunder.com. And like you said, I'm on KREF Radio and 107.7 The Franchise in Oklahoma City.
Go check out Brandon Rabar on Twitter. Check me out on Thunder on SI. And of course, here on Locked On Thunder, your team every day. And follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Again, thank you, Brandon. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.